Hello there. This video is a bit different than what I usually post. I mean, not that I have a consistent posting schedule or routine or anything like that, but I've recently been trying to get back into reading, because when I was young, when I was 11, 12, I was the biggest nerd and I would read all the time, but you know, life happens and it gets progressively harder and you kind of lose the habit of reading. And in the past year, I've been trying really hard to be consistent with my reading. Sometimes I failed, sometimes I succeeded. And in this last month, I finished Daisy Jones and the Six. And it's been quite popular at the moment, this book, because of the author. Taylor Jenkins Reid really blew up recently. And also because there's going to be an adaptation, a TV show is going to be released beginning of March, I believe. And when I finished it, it really got me thinking about the value in adapting a book into a film or a TV show. Because you see Marvel, for example, blooming with dozens and dozens of films, you know, adapting stories from the comic books. And you also see like Disney with their live actions. But are people actually enjoying the live actions? In my opinion, a good book, it has an interesting, engaging story, and it takes you on a journey that changes this flawed, but real character, and it does in a way that makes sense, right? Like the way the beginning, the middle, and end follow each other and are affected by each other is all coherent, it all makes sense. But what makes it great rather than just good is that the medium in which the story is told, it takes part in that development. If you look back into most classics, you know, the ones that you go to Spark Notes about for school, there's always going to be a category explaining the structure and the stylistic devices that they use to tell that story. You can derive meaning from the way the dialogue and the characterization and, you know, the text is structured. Obviously, almost all of this is subjective, right? Like, people consider different things to be more important than others, and I'm not here to impose my views. You can consider whatever you want to be more important. But at the end of the day, structure is one of the main aspects of a book and the way a book tells a story. And when talking specifically about books and films, I wouldn't say they're completely opposites, because they have the same goal of immersing the viewer, the audience, into this world and these characters and the story. But they are different ways of telling a story. You know, one of them requires a lot more imagination than the other. And if the structures of those mediums are different, then the way that you create meaning through those devices, they are different as well. And so that's why I think it's very difficult to convert books into films or series in a way that's good, basically. Although this is not to say that, you know, it's impossible and it shouldn't be done. I mean, there are many things that they share, even relating to structural things, structural devices. There are many things that books and films share. And there are plenty of ways of using things that you would only usually see in books or in films in the other medium. I mean, I'm not here to bore you, but if you ever read Of Mice and Men, you know that it's one of those books where teachers will always talk about the structure and the stylistic devices that they use and how those are so important for the meaning of the story itself. The dialogue is very colloquial and uses slangs of the time, and that reflects the social class that those characters pertain to and their personalities. And that's very easily transferred to film, because every visual storytelling use that technique themselves. They use characterization through dialogue as script writing 101. But another aspect of Mice and Men is that it's written in a similar way to the way a play is written. It's very non-descriptive. If they're talking about a building or the scenario around them, they'll talk about the shape, the colors, you know, very objective aspects. And because it's different from the way that you usually read a novel, people derive meaning of it and tied to the story, whether it's because the viewer is the one supposed to draw their own conclusions, not to the writer to tell them what character is to blame, what character is wrong, or whether it's because the story itself should be the one reflecting the dreadful times that they were in, rather than relying on adjectives like dreadful, there's plenty of interpretations for it. When it comes to Daisy Jones and the Six, the structure of it is used to reflect the attempt to piece together the story of this band. And so you have the character's recount of what happened followed by a different character's recount of what happened, and it jumps between point of views and it jumps between characters. The structure, it feels more integral to the characterization of those characters, understanding those characters rather than understanding what happened, understanding the events themselves. This back and forth between the characters creates two main things. Most of the comedy in the book, because most of the funny bits is because someone says something or believes in something that is immediately discredited by someone else. Like, for example, when they're discussing about how the name The Six came about, Warren says, "Part of the brilliance of the name was how close it was to the sex. But I don't think any of us ever talked about that. It was so obvious there was no need to put a finer point on it. Karen, I was not thinking about it sounding like anything. Billy, the sex? No, that wasn't part of it." The comedy comes most of the time because of this contrast of point of views. And the second main thing that this back and forth structure creates is this very interesting, unreliable narrative. It reflects what happens in real life because you don't have a camera filming you 24/7 and you don't have a way to 100% improve the things that happen. All you have is memories and pieces of the story that you remember and other people's point of views that might differ from yours. And because of this structure, it makes the characters feel much more real, which is essential when you're portraying celebrities because you want to make them relatable and real as opposed to the pedestal that they're usually in. And I've said all of this to basically ask, how the hell do you translate that into a film format? Like, jumping from character to character in a film format would be very jarring, I think. Yes, you have the mockumentary format that The Office and Parks and Recreation use that is brilliant for comedy, but this story isn't exactly that kind of comedy. It has its comedic moments, and it is, I would say, mostly a feel-good story, but it does have themes of addiction and heartbreak, and I would find it very weird to adapt this into a solely comedic format. And also because it would be really weird to jump between interviewing this 70-year-olds talking about their memories and then the memories in this documentary format. It would just be weird and jarring. It wouldn't make sense. So would you have this third-party objective point of view that most TV shows and films have? From the trailer, it does seem to me that that's the direction they're taking, but obviously it's too early to tell. And if it is, I'll be a bit disappointed. Not surprised, but a bit disappointed, because it means there's some things you can't transfer from one medium to the other. And this brings me to my second point, which is, should we be aiming to do things exactly as they are in the original medium? Or are the singularities of every medium what makes them special? And the fact that you can't transfer some things, some aspects in different mediums, is what makes them valuable. A lot of the time, it feels like adaptations and remakes are just people looking at something that they like, watching a story that they liked and going like, damn it, I wish I had thought of that. I would have made it better. And then they take their story and they change it the way that they think would be best. And I'm not saying that that's bad, or I'm not saying that that's good. I mean, everyone has had that thought once in their lives. But at some point, we do gotta be honest with ourselves. We are oversaturated with content, and a lot of those are just remakes of things that we have seen before. And I don't have an answer to this, I'm just bringing this up. I'm just, having this conversation with a camera. But what value does repeating a story have? I understand that as we progress in time, there is a development of new technology. There's better CGI, there's better ways to feature real people in this fantastic and magical scenarios that you could only do in animation ones. So there's obviously value in that aspect. Also, I am personally a bit of a sucker for history and learning about things of the past and all of that. So I do see value in introducing to a new generation stories that would have been forgotten, right? Like Wednesday, for example, the new Netflix show. It introduced to a lot of people the Addams Family, and it gives them an opportunity to go back and watch the old films or the old shows and enjoy those things that would have just been forgotten once that generation died. But what is the value in adapting something that just been released into a different medium, a book into a film or a show? It's not a classic from decades ago that you're trying to reimagine to fit into the new audience that you have. It's just a story that you could easily go to any bookstore, buy and read and consume. You're removing this very important aspect of the story, the structure of it, and putting it into a different format where I can't think of a way to do it in the same way that the book does. Hi, sorry, I don't think I finished my thought when I was recording it, but my point was, what is the value in doing an adaptation that is going to remove a very important aspect of the story, that is the structure? How is removing this important aspect of the story making it better? Is the value in adapting into TV just because we like this character so much and we like this universe so much that we want to spend more time with them and we want to see them more? You want to consume the story for longer and perhaps more in depth. Me personally, I like things all or nothing. 880. You're either very similar to the original, giving the characters the proper and rightful development that they had in the original medium. For example, The Hunger Games. I think the movies are very similar to the books, and I think they do a great job in portraying those characters. Unlike the Percy Jackson films, because Percy Jackson is a series that's so close to my heart. It was one of my favorite books growing up, and the films fucking butchered it. And I want to personally slap every person involved in those productions. Or you take the world and the universe that's so beloved by fans already, and it's so well developed and has set of rules, and you create your characters on top of that. Like, I haven't played the new Harry Potter game. I've only ever seen the TikToks and people posting about it, but it does seem like a good game, and it does seem like people are enjoying it. And that's an example of like getting the world of Harry Potter that's so beloved and so well established. Regardless of what we feel about the author herself. It is a world and a universe that's beloved. And you get that world and you build characters and stories on top of that. It's the same thing with the Avatar series, the Avatar The Last Airbender, not the blue guys. Like you have on top of the TV show, the original one, you have comics that are set after the show, and so you have these characters, but you can create different stories without affecting the original one. Or the other TV show, Legend of Korra, which is the Avatar after Aang. Or you have a book, a different medium, about an avatar that came before Aang. Have the Rise of Kyoshi. I think it's like 2 avatars before Aang actually. It's a different medium. The structure is very different from the show. It's so descriptive, incredibly descriptive. Sometimes a bit tiring, but it's a great story. I love it. And you have the opportunity to create a new character, develop those characters and that story on your own without affecting the original one. Now I want to talk about my expectations, my hopes and my fears for the TV show based on Daisy Jones. Obviously, we can only base off the trailer and whatever interview that there has been. And we have to wait until the show comes out, which I am going to watch, to, have concrete opinions about it. But I am going to talk about my expectations, and there are going to be some spoilers in this bit. So, do with that what you will. So right off the bat, Camilla worries me. Because the trailer showed a but somewhat different character than what you get in the book. In the trailer, she seems a lot more jealous than she is in the book. I mean, obviously, she doesn't like the infidelity. There's, who would like that? But in the book, it is a main plot point that Camilla and Billy's relationship is built on trust, and a crazy type of trust. And what I liked about that relationship is that it showed me a different perspective of a marriage and trust within a marriage. This poor woman, like, why would you stay in a relationship with someone who's a cheater? Why would you stay in a relationship after someone cheats? All of that. And I still stand by that. I mean, I wouldn't stay in a relationship with someone after they cheated. But reading this book, you get the perspective of Camilla and her reasoning behind staying with Billy after finding out about his infidelity, his serial infidelity, and his addiction and what he was going through. And you see that they consider each other as their lifelong partners, and they are gonna stand by each other as long as they treat each other right and are trying to be better, especially Billy with his addiction. And then there is a segment in the trailer where Camilla says, if you cheated with Daisy Jones, that would be my last straw. Like, that would be the one thing that I couldn't forgive. And then when I watched that, I was like, hold on. In the book, Camilla says, to be honest, that's when I questioned my own faith. Finding him sitting at a bar, flags went up. I started to wonder if maybe Billy was capable of doing something that I would be incapable of forgiving. It started to make me wonder if that would be something that I couldn't forgive. It doesn't specifically mention Daisy. My take on it is that she doesn't want him to relapse. You have Billy constantly denying that he has feelings for Daisy, and it's only in the end when he finally admits that Daisy represented his addiction for him, and that she was the one thing that he couldn't have. That was the one line that he wouldn't cross. Building on this point, on the last conversation that Camilla has with Daisy, where she kind of gives her an ultimatum of like, you're in love with my husband, please leave. And it's a conversation that feels like it's coming from love, really, not out of jealousy. So that's why I don't like that they're taking the jealousy route. But yeah, when they're having that conversation, it keeps cutting back to Billy struggling to decide to put the tequila glass down. And it's a very interesting contrast. It kind of ties it back that although Billy has been writing these love songs that to everyone else, it seems like it is about Daisy and about wanting to sleep with her. This moment of him struggling to decide to put the glass down it ties in that Daisy represented all of the things that he was trying to run away from himself, and so giving in to his desire, his physical attraction to her, would be given in to the alcohol, to his addiction. So his relationship to Daisy is a lot deeper than just, I want to sleep with her and cheat on my wife, you know? And so Camilla's relationship to Daisy and her view on Daisy is a lot deeper than just jealousy of, oh, this beautiful woman likes my husband, you know, and works with my husband. From the trailer, again, don't know yet, but from the trailer, it feels like they're taking it on the jealousy route, and that's what they're gonna focus on, and that Daisy is the problem. So I'm scared that that's all it's gonna be in the show. But I do also see that a trailer, you want to catch, you know, people's attention, and I do think that that's the best way to catch someone's attention. You know, the drama of the jealousy, of the ultimatum, when it is much deeper than that in the book. Now, my hopes for the show. Something that I think the show can do better than the book, actually. Ooh. And to be clear, I do like this book. I really do. I'm not shitting on it. But I do have to talk about the things that I didn't like. There is kind of a plot twist in this book, which I don't consider to be much of a plot twist. But again, major spoiler. The author that's piecing these interviews together and piecing the story together is Billy's and Camilla's first child, Julia. And it was a bit of a letdown, I'll be honest, because when you get The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, there is a big plot twist of why, what's her name? There is a little mystery to why Monique is the one interviewing Evelyn and why Evelyn wants her to interview her. And then you find out at the end, I'm not going to tell you. It ties back to the story of Evelyn Hugo, and it has reason, it has like meaning to it. With Daisy Jones in the 6, it's like, okay, she's Julia is the one interviewing, okay, I don't care. It doesn't do anything to the story, it doesn't add anything to it. And I do think, like, if you're reading it back, it's kind of heartbreaking to imagine that Billy is telling his daughter that he missed the first months of her life and he missed her birth because of addiction and because of fear of fatherhood and all these things. It is heartbreaking to think about that, but it's not explored enough. It's not, you know, there's nothing to it. There's no emotional moment of like, oh my god. It's kind of a letdown that that's the big plot twist. And then it happens in this climax. Especially because, like I said, you're reading in this structure of back and forth, and you're immersed in the story, immersed in the contrast between the characters explaining what's happening, and then all of a sudden you're interrupted by, author, wait a minute. Authors know, while I have made a concerned effort to remove myself from the narrative, I have included here verbatim transcript of one conversation I had with Daisy Jones, because I am, in fact, the only one that can corroborate this essential piece of Daisy's story. And then it kind of goes in this little bit of interview style of response of Daisy and author talking to each other, and it's kind of jarring, I'll be honest. I don't know, maybe it's just me, maybe other people didn't think that, but it annoyed me. It annoyed me because it was just like, I love the structure and how it is, and then all of a sudden you have this plot twist that's not really relevant or that doesn't add to anything, and it just breaking the structure that was already, you know, different from the book structure. I don't know, I didn't like it. And I also think that the ending of it can be better in the show, because I know the TV shows tend to be more dramatic, because I feel like it wasn't dramatic enough. Like, you know from the beginning, it tells you the first part of it that they're broken up. It was an infamous split while on tour in Chicago in July 12, 1979, sorry. You know that they're gonna split, and you know it's an infamous, you know it's dramatic. So you don't have the surprise of it, because you already know it's gonna happen. So you need the reveal to be big enough to compensate for the lack of surprise. You know what I mean? The reveal of Daisy Jones being the first one to leave the band kind of just falls flat, right? Because you have this incredible conversation between Daisy and Camilla where everything's out on the table. You are in love with my husband and it's destroying both of you and is destroying this band, driving everyone mad. Like, are you able to move on and stay in the bed, or are you gonna leave? There is this ultimatum of you need to decide. And that would have been so much better, I think, if that was the big reveal, that Daisy was the first one to leave, and then everyone just kind of fall apart and they don't know why Daisy left. And then after everyone else has their own say on why they don't want to be in the band anymore, because everyone has a problem with it, then you find out that Camilla and Daisy had the conversation. That is my opinion. That's how I would have done it. People might disagree with me. There is a part of the book that does a brilliant job of setting up the expectation and the, oh no, what is gonna happen? So after Rod was remembering how he was thinking if it was possible to replace Eddie if he left the band, and how he thought that Eddie would leave the band at some point. And then Waring says, being proud that you predicted Eddie would leave the band is like saying, I predicted the sun would come out today, the day before a nuclear disaster. Yeah man, great guess. But you didn't exactly notice the world was ending? So you're expecting a pretty big reveal. You're expecting a pretty big boom, they're done, right? Boom, they broke up. And the reason why they broke up. Because essentially what Warren is saying is that, yeah, Eddie was gonna leave the band, but that was kind of on the nose. Like, everyone knew that he was gonna leave the band. What actually happened was crazy. That's essentially what they're saying. And then when you get to there, the moment needed to be special on itself. Because you didn't have the surprise that it was gonna happen, but you did have the expectation that it was gonna be something big. So these are my thoughts on the book and the whole issue of adapting the book into film. And I don't have the answers of anything that I said. I don't know how you would adapt this to visual format and maintaining the structure of it, of like the back and forth between characters. I hope that the show does the characters justice, especially Camilla, because that's the one that I'm most scared. I hope that it's good on its own. I do recommend this book. I know I shit it on it a little bit at the end here of the video, but I do think it's a good book. I think it's so easy to read, it's so fun, it's very lighthearted at the same time that he talks about very deep issues like addiction and fatherhood, really, jealousy and trust between couples and all that stuff. That's the end of the video. I know, like I said, it's different from what I usually post. Don't know if I'll continue posting this, but I did have fun and I hope you enjoyed it. If you did like it, please let me know your comments and your opinions and down below. And I'm gonna go. Bye.